Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him she cooked meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up getting ready to leave. He told me no offense, but this meal, that his mom cooked, was even more of a favorite than the one I cooked. And grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. To make one thing clear, and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. I will be sitting down with my husband soon. After he breaks the silence, I'm just giving him the space he said he wanted. I will also be pushing for couples counseling, although he's always been against it, but we'll see how things go. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel upset and like my efforts aren't being appreciated. His mom is definitely onto something with her little upsetting stunts. I realize how important boundaries are, but also realize how enforcing can be difficult. I'm hoping and praying that we will tackle this issue so that our marriage won't suffer, but if he's still somehow unable to do his part, then that's on him, and I'm no longer willing to go through similar stuff and just take it. I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him, and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. I'm a professional ballet dancer for a living, but I also do some modeling in my spare time. Last weekend, I was doing a latex shoot. Before anybody says anything, it wasn't anything fetish-wise. It was just a shoot that called for wearing more uncommon types of fabrics. My outfit was a black full-body catsuit, so think of a skin-tight garment that covers from neck to toe, including gloves. If you've ever put on a wetsuit, then you can probably imagine how much of a pain it is. It's a pretty in-depth process that involves lots of baby powder, a lot of sweat, and some less than ladylike stances. Dressing usually takes anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes start to finish. I always dread it, but can't argue with the results. Anyway, my boyfriend was in my dressing room as I was getting changed. He doesn't always come along for shoots, but I needed him that day because my car is being repaired and we needed to go somewhere afterwards. His one kinda annoying thing is that he talks to me while I'm getting changed, even though I very politely asked him to let me do it in peace. If I'm just putting on a dress or something less complicated, it's not a problem. But with latex, you have to concentrate, seriously. My facial expression is pretty similar to when I'm doing heavy leg presses or squats at the gym, so that the garment slips on correctly and, more importantly, you don't rip it. It's very easy to tear if you're not careful. And a full-body catsuit can cost upwards of $700 to $800 minimum. So as I'm struggling, may have been on the floor on my back with my feet up on a chair, pushing my butt up to get the garment over my hips, he won't stop talking. Come on, girl, you got this. Do you want help? I don't think you put on enough baby powder. Babe, you got this, get that big ass in there. And I politely asked him several times to just let me concentrate. He responds by saying, relax, I'm just trying to help, before patting me on the butt. I'd had enough. I demanded he stand outside because he was being super distracting and I couldn't afford to rip the garment. I didn't ask him to help because there's a technique to getting latex on and he doesn't have it. He got all pissy and was like, whatever, maybe you need a bigger size anyway, before leaving the shoot completely and taking the car. I had to get an Uber home after the shoot. On one hand, I was getting super frustrated, I was hot and sweaty, and combined with my kinda short temper, I was getting pissed off that I couldn't get the suit on. On the other hand, I asked him multiple times not to comment or distract me. And I never indicated that I was in the mood to be touched. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little, and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation, and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying, whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, hand me Spanish word, please, knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue. To which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying.